Welcome to the PlantFit Summit, bringing you the best in plant-based health and fitness. This is Luke and Toby, and today we have Tyler Tolman. Tyler is a qualified iridologist and fasting expert. He is the co-founder of the Conscious Lifestyler and Heal Thyself brands, where together with his wife Rochelle, they have touched the lives of millions of people around the world through live events, workshops, retreats, and educational programs. Today, we chat with Tyler about the synergy between modern science and ancient healing wisdom. He also shares about how we can learn to use nature to heal ourselves. We start the conversation with Tyler sharing about what the 7 principles of health are. Enjoy the presentation.
So the 7 principles of health, they're kind of like the pillars, the basic things that really we should be looking at before going super advanced into the whole foods, herbs, other types of conversations. The 7 principles really come from like an observation of the longest lived cultures on this planet. And it's the observation that they breathe clean air, they drink clean water, they're out in the sun most of the time. They exercise mostly in the form of just walking and basic movement, lifting, walking, basic stuff. They eat whole foods in general. So they typically have access to fruit trees and nuts and seeds and vegetables and things of this nature, which is what they exist on mostly. They have a positive outlook on life and good relationships. So the elderly are looked up to for being around longer and having information, and they typically teach the children. And, so there's good relationships within the communities. And then they typically kind of like, just know who they are, and they kind of know what they're passionate about. And so they kind of just crack on living their passion. So the 7 principles are air, water, sunshine, exercise, whole foods, relationships, and passion. Those are the 7 areas of life that if we can really have some discovery and kind of set some mile markers, so to speak, to be somewhat about these things and have some balance in these things, it's really what's going to lead towards a longer, healthier life, according to research.
That is obviously like nowadays in the modern high-tech world, people don't think in those terms oftentimes, right? We look for external solutions, be it a pill, be it some medication, whatever. So what's your experience and also what the science is starting to show us in terms of looking for external sources for health rather than taking it into our own hands?
Yeah, well, so far, I really love looking into the science of longevity. It's referred to as gerontology. There's universities around the world, especially in the United States, that focus on gerontology specifically. And, they're always looking for the magic pill, always looking for the next ingredient, astragalus and telomerase and, all of these different ones, comes from grapes, resveratrol, and how they open up pathways in our genetics for longevity. And the truth is, with all the discoveries that have ever been made, they know that the greatest factors in human longevity that they've ever researched have been 2 things. Number 1 is caloric restriction, meaning the cultures that eat the least amount of calories live the longest, which is kind of the opposite of what so many people are doing today with trying to bulk up and eat more calories. And number 2 is cycled fasting. So they find if we can, bring about a situation of kind of like eating and then fasting and then eating and fasting, it's going to radically increase lifespan, way beyond resveratrol or telomerase or any of these other things that are being looked at and drugs that are being discovered, things like this. And this is studies they've done for, nearly 100 years on apes and rhesus monkeys and every type of, worm and animal on this planet. They've discovered that, hey, this actually works. And when we look at the actual cultures that are the longest live on this planet, it kind of coincides. So we have the existing science of looking at who is living the longest, what are they doing. We have our scientific research inside of universities, and it always just comes back to, these couple of main points, which is caloric restriction and potential cycled fasting. And And that's kind of what ancient history shows us as well, all the way back to Hippocrates and so many others saying, hey, fasting is the greatest medicine. It gives our body a break. We can heal. We can get into specific science, but that's kind of what it comes down to.
So you mentioned cycled fasting. What would you define as cycled fasting?
Yeah, so the way that they organize research in universities is because, you have to follow, let's say, a rhesus monkey or an ape, its entire lifespan. Instead of just like feeding it one meal a day, they just say, let's just put the food out and they can eat it all day. And then let's take the food away and then they fast. So they're doing cycled fasting, 1 day eating, 1 day fasting, 1 day eating, 1 day fasting. And this type of activity can increase the lifespan of these, apes and monkeys, potentially 30 to 40%. And when you really look at, our human experience and our genetics and our anatomy and physiology, you start to equate 30 to 40%, with a healthy human, because this has never really been done. So if we took a healthy human, we know that a healthy human that gets everything it needs in a proper environment should live to be, let's say, 110 or 120. There's people that live to be 120, right? So you start to add 30% to that, and you're like, whoa, that's a pretty big deal. That's potentially 160 years old if we took humans and, fed them one day and take their food away the next. So you start to see a radical increase that nothing has ever gotten near that. So that's the way they design the model. And when you really start to look at the specific science of, how long does it take going without food for us to enter ketosis? So that's a fat burning state. How long does it take for autolysis? And this is where, it slows the reproduction rate of our cells to repair themselves. So through this autophagy process, you can look at, how many hours that takes to enact it, what happens in a short period of time. And then you can start to put together, what is the actual optimal lifestyle so that, we're not just gourding ourselves one day and then the next day just completely fasting and starving and being like, oh, I need food. And really what it comes down to is looking at, an eating window every day that's reduced. And I believe that, as we get older, this eating window should reduce more and more and more. You look at a child that's first born into this world and they're suckling from mama's teat every 2 hours. But then within about a year of that, then the meals can get spaced. And then, as individuals get older, they're and they're still eating 3 meals a day, their teeth start to fall out. And I believe literally we lose our teeth as a last sign of like, hey, maybe you should slow down on eating 3 to 5 times a day. Otherwise, you're going to die. People put in false teeth and they kind of eat themselves into the grave. So there's an ancient wisdom that shares, when we should kind of cut back on a meal a day and then, what age we should cut back again. And then there's the science that is kind of confirming these things as well. So there's, kind of multiple angles to take it from. Some people solely promote this information based on science. Some people solely promote this information based on, different cultures that exist, and some based on history. What did the Essenes do? What did the Egyptians do? What did, some of these ancient cultures that potentially lived a long time, what did they do? So there's different ways to kind of look at it.
Yeah, I find that very fascinating. And you mentioned some of the biological processes that happen when we start fasting that I'm personally not familiar with. So I would love to find out more about what happens when we go on a fast. You mentioned ketosis. You mentioned 2 other processes that I personally don't know of. But I would love to find out what happens inside our body and how does it turn into maybe longevity and health.
Yeah, so, I believe that we can live the most optimal lifestyle if we observe the body's natural processes that it wants to go through. And I've listed it into 3 8-hour periods. An 8-hour period where our body needs to detox, needs to fast, needs to clean out all the waste from the day before. One big discovery that most people aren't aware of is that every food has a level of toxins involved with it. We talk about toxins, we talk about detox and this sort of thing. Well, everything has toxins. Every plant has toxin. Every food item has toxins that our liver has to deal with and break down and eliminate. And then some foods have antioxidants, and they have, vitamins and minerals that our body needs as well. So it doesn't matter what you eat. If you're eating, there needs to be a period that we're not eating to get rid of the waste and detox and be ready for the next meals. And if you ask most people, and say, hey, when do you think you're healing the most? They'd say, well, probably when I'm sleeping. Absolutely. So what happens is our body goes through 3 8-hour periods. It goes through a process of appropriation. That's kind of like bringing things in. We go through a process of assimilation. That's moving the food, digesting in the stomach, coming into the small intestine, where it then starts to take all the nutrients out, moves through the small intestine into the colon. Bacteria breaks it down. We get our micronutrients, our minerals, and things of this nature. And then an 8-hour period where our body just wants to really get rid of waste. So if you can think about it on these 3 different levels, appropriation, assimilation, detoxification. And I believe that if we started focusing on each one of these being an 8-hour period, we could benefit greatly. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, why specifically. So in one of these phases, first, I want to talk about, supporting detoxification. Then I'll get into the specific mechanisms. But, we have 4 channels of elimination. And so this would be called detoxification. And it's funny because I talk about detoxification and a medical doctor might step in and be like, oh, there's no such thing as detoxification. That's a complete myth. And it's like, well, what happens when you poop? And he's like, oh, well, it's getting rid of waste. Okay, call it waste, call it toxins. When you poop, that's detoxification. It's elimination of waste, right? And the doctor would be like, well, yes. Okay, well, what happens if you can't poop? It becomes super toxic. Hello, it's just the waste system. So first of all, you have to establish that, yes, there's detoxification. Yes, there's elimination. And yes, these processes of elimination can be blocked, therefore leading to more toxicity, creating disharmony within the body or disease. So the main channels of elimination are defecation, pooping, urination, peeing, perspiration, sweating, and respiration, which is breathing. We breathe in oxygen, it alkalizes the body, feeds the cells, we breathe out. It's eliminating carbonic acids that are created by all of the cells through the process of energy. Okay, so I'm a big believer that when we go to bed at night, let's say you have your last meal at 6 o'clock, okay? You eat a big meal, you get all your fats, your proteins, your carbohydrates, whatever you're eating. Well, most of that's going to take about 1 to 2 hours to digest in your stomach. So 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, I'm digesting all my food in my stomach. By 8 o'clock, it's out of my stomach in my small intestine. It's going to be an 8-hour period of assimilating all the nutrients from that. So 8 hours later, after 8 o'clock, if we do the math here, I'm a little bit slow, but by about 4 o'clock in the morning, by 4 a.m., our body's done assimilating. Now it starts to go into a process of detoxification. And, this is a way of knowing if you're toxic. If you wake up in the morning, let's say 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, you're already well and truly into this detoxification phase. So what is detox? Well, it's a little bit of headache. It's a little bit of thick coating on your tongue. It's a little bit of like, I feel kind of gross and this doesn't feel good. That's detoxification. So what we want to do when we first wake up in the morning is support detoxification. We want to get up, drink, a liter of water, go for a walk. What happens when you do that? You typically have to go poop. And that's the first level of elimination. You drink a liter of water, you also got to go pee. That's elimination. Maybe you go out and go for a fast walk or a run or you exercise, you start to sweat. That's detoxification. You breathe deeply through exercise or even doing yoga or some type of specific breathing exercises. That's all promoting detoxification. So really, the faster we can detox from yesterday's waste, the sooner that we can get into, recharging the body and giving it food, basically. So what I'm here to share is that if we did nothing, if you like stayed in bed or you just drank some water, you probably have to go poo, you probably have to go pee anyways. Our body's always sweating a little bit and you're going to be breathing. It would probably take about another 8-hour period for your body to completely detox from yesterday's stuff that you took in. But we can speed up that process by going and exercising, breathing, drinking water, going poo, going pee, doing an enema, taking a shower, sitting in a sauna. There's all these levels of support and detoxification that we can be about to promote this process. Now I'll talk about the actual science. Okay, I'll take a deep breath here. So the science states that when I eat dinner, I'm going to get all that I need to support a level of glucose contained within my liver. My liver will hold about 12 hours of glucose stores. So let's say I eat my meal at 6 o'clock, okay? The sugars get uptaken in my mouth and in my stomach fairly quickly. The sugars really shouldn't be moving into the small intestine. Otherwise, it creates SIBO, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. You get candida, you get all these types of things, which typically happen from mixing a lot of sugar and a lot of fat. But that's a side story. So let's say I eat my last meal at 6 o'clock. I take in all these sugars. My liver gets filled up with sugar. So my liver has everything it needs to organize and put out glucose into my bloodstream for the next 12 hours. So that means at 6 o'clock in the morning, my glucose stores start to run out and my body will go into a process called nutritional ketosis, which means I'll start to burn some of my own fat and go into like gluconeogenesis. I'll burn my own fat to convert it into glucose to keep the sugars going for my brain and my cells. All the cells, all the brain, everything runs on glucose or sugars. This is just a well-known fact. Ketosis is a process of changing the fat into that sugar. So 12 hours later, 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm in a bit of nutritional ketosis. My body can still run on the fat that I have, which is what I want. You know, most people want to burn fat, and fat's quite efficient once we switch into this ketosis process. Now, if I kept just drinking water, or let's say coffee without any sugar, without any calories, or tea or something of this nature, if I kept that up and had no calories or no sugars, I would be in a full process of ketosis, typically within 48 hours. So if, 48 hours of fasting, then I'm fully just running on fats. And that's where a lot of fat can be lost. That's where ketones, are good for the brain. A lot of this stuff is happening. But okay, so within 12 hours, I'm in ketosis. So imagine if every day you ate your last meal at 6 o'clock at night, 6 o'clock in the morning, you're burning your own fat, and then you start to exercise, breathe, drink water, sweat, go through and support detoxification and extended the process of not eating for another 8 hours. You'd be running on your own fat for 8 hours, which is going to help you to stay trim and healthy. Ketone bodies are actually improving the cognitive state in the brain and giving us all these other factors that are very beneficial for health. And this is what a lot of the ketogenic diet people are focused on. Like, hey, look at all the research of ketosis. It's amazing. And it's true. Ketosis is amazing. But when I go into ketosis every day, I want it to be my own fat. And I want to get the benefits of burning waste instead of like drinking oil or eating pure butter fat from a cow. Like, yeah, you can do that and stay in ketosis, but why not just burn your own fat? So that's kind of one of the key points that I want to share is ketosis. Then there's another key factor that kicks in that's called autophagy. And it comes from autophagy. So auto means automatic. Phagy means digestion. So we automatically self-digest the worn out cells in the body. Okay, and there's some major implications of this. A lot of people that eat high protein diets through animals and animal-based foods, if they stopped eating animal-based foods and went into autophagy, what happens is the hundreds of thousands, when I say hundreds of thousands, probably hundreds of millions of cells that are being used up every single day actually get self-digested. Okay, so the cells that we have in our body that get used up, they have to be recycled and renewed anyway, and they're made of human protein, which is actually matches human protein. So when we go through this autophagy stage, we're breaking down our own cells and reusing the amino acids to regrow new cells. And this is, man, I can't even begin to share the implications of this science. Like, the science is proving this, and there's videos that are coming out now saying, oh my God, we don't have to eat animals. We actually eat ourselves every day. That's the best animal protein if we just go through this phase of fasting. Excuse me, on a daily basis. The other implications of this, so our body has to do that anyway, and it also has to deal with the amount of onslaught of animal-based proteins that are coming in and needing to be digested as well. So I know I'm jumping around a bit here, but when people wake up in the morning, they're in a phase of detox. Most people feel like crap because they need to detox. I wake up at 5 o'clock. I was up at 5 o'clock in the morning. My legs are getting out of bed. I've already gone for a big walk, did my shake and bake, did the thing called Tibetan rites, doing my meditation, going through all my detoxification stuff, feeling fantastic. Like, you can't keep me in bed past 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning because I'm wired and I'm detoxed. But the person who's not detoxed is going to feel like crap in the morning. And what they normally do is get up like, I feel like crap, I need to eat something. So they eat something and they automatically feel better. But the reason they feel better is because as soon as you eat something, your body shifts completely out of detoxification to go into digestion. So it takes away the energy from detox, which makes you feel better because you're no longer detoxing, and it goes into the energy of digestion. So people are constantly using their energy for digestion. Well, digestion takes more energy than anything. So this leads to chronic fatigue, leads to adrenal fatigue. This leads to, mental fog. It leads to all these other problems that people deal with on a daily basis, then rely on coffee or stimulants or drugs or things to keep them going. So really what people need to do is allow their body to detox. If you wake up in the morning and you feel like crap, that's because you're toxic. So, support feeling like crap. Drink the water, take the poo, exercise, sweat it out, do what you got to do. And what most people will notice, like, I have a program called Praxis, and people come in and we do intermittent fasting, and we have a chef that teaches plant-based, how to make plant-based foods, and you can still have pizza, you can still have Mexican food, you can still have burritos and, all the things that people are used to, spaghetti bolognese and all the best foods on the planet, but you can make it out of plants. So I teach them how to support detoxification in the morning. We all do intermittent fasting, and then they go off with the chef in the afternoon and they make their meals. And what we notice is day 1 and 2, everybody's like lethargic in the morning and really feeling it. And by day 5, everybody, literally that quick, 5 days. Within 5 days, people are like, oh my God, mental clarity, I have energy, I feel great, I'm not hungry in the morning. And they're super stoked. And, midday, we're breaking the fast with fresh fruits because I believe anytime you break a fast, you should do it with a high water content, either fruit or vegetables, celery, cucumber, high water content to support digestion. And again, I'm jumping around here a little bit. But when we observe the fast, protein recycling goes up. So our body's ability to recycle proteins is amplified. Protein utilization goes up. Our ability to digest the proteins, the B1 and B2 and the B vitamins that are needed, are gathering and building up, and things are happening so that when I do have a meal, I can digest it optimally. I'm not eating 5 meals a day where everything's suboptimal. When you eat 1 or 2 meals a day, your body's really digesting and getting all the nutrients from it in such an optimal way. So sorry, I feel like I'm having some diarrhea of the mouth here, and I'll let you guys ask some questions.
No, I think that's absolutely brilliant because you went through the whole process of fasting to food, to detoxification. And I think now that you brought up food, I think it's important for us to kind of understand. You mentioned whole foods as one of your 7 pillars. Of course, this is the Plant Fit Summit. We talk about a whole food plant-based diet. Is that what your definition of whole foods is?
1,000%. That's it. What's the easiest thing for human beings to do? Go run around chasing animals all day until you kill them all off, and shove them into a bunch of big factories, which creates waste and destruction, and grow massive crops to try to feed animals when we could grow those crops to feed ourselves. So, plant-based is, look all around us. It's easy to pick fruit. It's easy to grow crops. It's easy to, get greens and all these sorts of things. And for thousands of years, it's been really easy to dry these fruits and dry the nuts and seeds and keep these things for winter as well. So it's the main repetitive thing that we see in all longest lived cultures is that they eat a plant-based diet. And I wouldn't say that they're 100% vegan. There are a couple that are, and probably the most profound, studies can be done on those people because they live, in the United States. But, around the world, when you observe, the Okinawans, the longest lived women on the planet, Ikaria, Greece, the longest lived men on the planet, and some of these other places, they eat a plant-based diet, period. And if you want to go live with them and observe them, you would just be like, yeah, they eat a plant-based diet. So yes, when I say whole foods, it's about really concentrating your energy and diet on plants. And then if you have a goat and you can milk it and drink some of its milk or make some butter, or you got some chickens out there scratching in the dirt and eating bugs and they produce some eggs, great, awesome, good on you. But, the focus should really be on growing food as much as possible.
So going a little bit deeper, because I've also followed your work and followed your dad's work for a while, because I know your dad has mentioned a while back about, and possibly yourself as well, about how certain foods resemble certain body parts and how they actually accelerate healing if they look like a certain body part. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's 100% true, and this has been shared for thousands of years. One of the proponents that brought this information back, because it existed in ancient cultures, and everybody, if you look back to the ancient Egyptians, the Egyptians were actually around a lot longer than what we're told, and everything they did was based on a language of nature. Their language was actually originally called the Medu Netru, which means the language of nature, and they observed everything that they saw. They could see a reflection in ourselves, so as above, so below, as within, so without. And they could see that every food had its counterpart as an actual internal organ. And it was a man by the name of Paracelsus who brought this information back. He was known as kind of like the father of chemistry. He was like a Swiss physician, I believe, in the late 1600s, 1700s, who called it the doctrine of signatures, or signum natura. And this is the observation that if you take a carrot out of the ground, you slice it open, it looks like a human eye. And, studies from University of Southern California find that it's the highest source of beta carotene, alpha carotene, which is a #1 component that increases blood flow to our eyes. So eating carrots is actually good for the eyes. It looks like the eye. You look at a walnut, it's got a husk, kind of like our skin. You take the husk off, it's got a hard shell like the cranial cap. You bust it open, it looks like left hemisphere, right hemisphere, convoluted dendritic folds, upper cerebrums, lower cerebellums. And Baylor University says it's the #1 brain food. It's got a perfect proportion of omega-3s, 6s, and 9s. Our body converts this to DHA. It enhances memory, cognitive function, prevents Alzheimer's. Pecans as well look like the brain, improve blood flow to the brain. So it's like, wow, what if certain foods that look like certain body parts are actually good for that? And it goes on and on and on. Like a tomato has 4 chambers, looks like the heart, it's red. Our scientists say lycopene, which means the color red is the best thing for our cardiovascular system. It reduces cholesterol, it prevents cancer, it reduces high blood pressure and all these things. It's like, wow, a tomato is actually good for the heart. Red capsicum, good for the heart. Cayenne pepper. A cayenne pepper looks like the main ascending aorta of the body. And there's cardiologists who say a teaspoon of cayenne pepper will absolutely prevent a heart attack. It'll open up and dilate all of your arteries. You look at beetroot. They call it a beet, like a heartbeat. You cut it, it looks like it's bleeding. It's the highest source of nitric oxide. So you drink it and it boosts endothelial function. You can get 30% more out of your physical activity and training by drinking beetroot juice. It goes on and on. Celery looks like the bones. It's the same amount of sodium ions that the bones have. The bones are about 23% sodium. Celery is about 23% sodium. Looks like the bones, snap like the bones, best food for your bones. Celery has vitamin K, which is implicated in being one of the best things for your bones as well. It goes on. Like I could talk about it for hours. Figs, they grow in twos on trees. They look like a man's testicles. They boost sperm count. They also look like a woman's ovaries, exactly like a woman's ovaries. They soak up excess estrogen, which women may have that lead to breast cancer. So, figs are one of the greatest foods for men and women for fertility, for virility. Peanuts, there's two little nuts in a hard shell. It's the main component. It's called arginine, which is replicated by pharmaceutical industries for Viagra. So peanuts are like, nature's Viagra. You look at sweet potato. Sweet potato is one of the best foods for our pancreas. It builds the pancreas. It reduces need for insulin. It regulates blood sugar. It's the main food eaten by the Okinawan women in Japan. It looks just like a pancreas. It heals the pancreas. It's amazing. Okra, again, okra actually looks like a little pancreas. And you look these foods up and it's just like, holy shit, red grapes, green grapes, red grapes, the main implication is called resveratrol, and it actually boosts the red blood cell count. It cleans the blood unlike any other food. So if you have hardening of the arteries, poor circulation, seeded grapes, especially grapeseed extract, kills cancer. Man, like the longest lived men on the planet from Icaria, Greece, this is crazy. They grow their own grapes and they make their own red wine. It's all biodynamic, organic, amazing stuff. And the men from Icaria, Greece have smaller red blood cells than anybody else on the planet. And I believe it's because they're actually drinking their fresh grape juice every day. Yes, call it wine, call it what you want, but it's their own natural ferments. So red grapes are good for the red blood cells. White grapes or green grapes are good for the immune system. So, if I keep on going, broccoli, it looks like the lungs, the bronchioles in the lungs, it actually opens up and cleans out the little bronchi and the little sacs inside of our lungs. There's scientific implication that eating broccoli can even prevent lung cancer in smokers. So it's just like, wow, and then, for me, like I go out and I fast on water for extended periods. And believe me, you'll never see as clearly and hear and smell anything, like when you've been fasting for 10 days on water. Then you go into a farmer's market or a grocery store or wherever, you start to look at foods and that the foods speak to you. It's just like, wow, I know what this is good for. And the smell is just amazing. And the processes that take place in the body are just phenomenal. So, this is the information that should be shared with all of the children all around the planet to inspire them that, hey, what if, you can look at a carrot in a different way, and you can look at a cucumber and, mango and apples and bananas. What if we could look at all this stuff in a completely different, inspiring way, knowing that these foods are bringing about our ultimate situation of health and vitality, and then it's like, well, what do I see when I look at a burger? What do I see when I look at bacon? Well, this is a dead animal, and what I see is death. What I see is the potential for cancer. What I see is science telling us like it's the leading source of carcinogen that we're consuming. So, call Plant Summit. Oh, it's, when we really raise our consciousness and look at things from a real perspective, we can gain some pretty cool insights.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. And I also love what you mentioned earlier, where you mentioned that our body is actually recycling our own protein through the natural replacement of cells that just occurs every day. And still today, everyone is focused on getting their proteins from other animal sources rather than having their internal protein being the source of amino acids and so forth. Maybe you could share a bit more about the implication that might come from consuming external protein sources. I mean, like animal protein, obviously, in that case.
Yeah, the truth is, like, everybody's focused on trying to get protein. And the truth is, like, protein is the least of our worries. Like, in fact, our body's recycling so much when we give it the chance to do that through autophagy that, we've already got enough of our own protein that's being recycled that to do pretty much everything. And so it's like, we need to really focus on, what does the body actually want? What does the brain want? And really we should take it back to, well, when a child's born into this world, I think everyone would agree that we're growing the fastest when we're first born into this world. And it's like, well, what does a baby get to grow? Because you'd think, well, it's going to get a radical amount of fat and protein if those are the building blocks for life. It's got to get tons of protein to be able to grow that fast. And then you really analyze, mother's milk, and you find something quite different. What you discover is that what's needed first and foremost is hydration. Mother's milk is like 90% water. So really we should be drinking water and hydrating ourselves and eating the types of foods that keep us hydrated, keep us hydrated, keep us hydrated. And then what's the major macronutrient of mother's milk? It's carbohydrates, it's sugar. And in fact, mother's milk pretty much replicates every fruit that you could go and get. Apple, banana, mango, papaya. A massive percentage of milk is sugars, carbohydrate. And then the next component's fat, but it's actually, a lot less than what we would think. Maybe 10 to 15% of mother's milk is actual fat from a caloric perspective. And then when you look at, nuts and seeds, especially seeds inside of fruit, it actually gives us quite a bit of fats and quite a bit of proteins. And when you look at the percentage of protein in mother's milk, it's maybe 1 to 5% calorically. The amount of protein is actually super small. And in fact, if you monitor protein in mother's milk, the older the child gets, the less protein is actually coming out of the milk. So every month there's actually less and less protein, which tells me that Mother Nature is training the human to have less and less and less protein. The amount of protein in mother's milk in the first couple months as compared to 1 year or 2 years later is less and less and less. So really the food that would mimic the best thing that we could be getting after mother's milk would be mashed up bananas, mango, papaya, fresh fruits, steamed vegetables, fresh fruits and vegetables, things of that nature. You'd start to throw in pig and cow and, eggs and these other things. And it's, in my opinion, way too much. You go from mother's milk to cow's milk, that's a huge difference. A cow's meant to grow a huge 500-pound heifer, in the first year or more. And it's like, well, that requires a lot more fat, especially, and more protein as well. So, you take a child, you put it on cow's milk, and you're going to see all of a sudden it gets nasally, mucus, congested, all kinds of things going on, constipated, et cetera, starts to develop skin conditions, catarrhal conditions, allergies, all this sort of thing. It's like all these 2 and 3-year-olds that always have runny noses and allergies and all this stuff going on. You just take away the cow's milk and all of a sudden, bang, it clears up. Start to give them some fruits. Start to give them some fruits and vegetables, and things can radically change. So, that would be my perspective. When we look at the state of disease in the world that we have today, 1 in 2 people will get cancer according to current statistics. Heart disease is the leading cause of all death, with strokes and heart attacks. And in my opinion, it's from the accumulation of these animal fats and proteins and the body just becoming super overwhelmed. So if you want to keep eating a lot of animals and animal products, you really need to incorporate the fasting and detoxification phases to allow the body to catch up, and you can probably still do that and be a lot healthier. Or you can really just start to eat, plants in general and get a lot healthier. Or, you could do both. You could observe intermittent fasting and eat plant-based whole foods, and maybe not look like a huge Mack truck running around if that's your goal. But it's completely unnatural. If you want to live a really long, healthy life, it really comes down to focusing on plants and reducing the amount of caloric intake, and maybe, skipping a meal when you're not starving. So many people just eat out of habit and they're never actually hungry. And for me, it's like, where's the joy? I love fasting to the point that I'm starving and really hungry. And then really what I want to eat is a mango, a papaya, a watermelon, rambutans, the fruits that are all growing outside. And once I satiate myself with these beautiful fruits, then I can move on to some salads, some vegetables, some nuts and seeds, and, maybe some amazing cooked meals as well.
Yep. You brought up an interesting point. Just really pushing yourself to a point of hunger and really devouring all these lush tropical fruits. So for someone who's starting out on this whole fasting journey and wanting to begin, how can they tell whether it's actual hunger versus habit? Because, when we've been eating 3 meals a day, 4 meals a day, you think you're hungry, but really I think a lot of times it's just habit. How can someone kind of tweak that to their advantage, to know that it's actually hunger?
So, what I would say is there's going to be some pain, and some suffering to break our addictions. Anytime you're addicted to anything and you stop, there's going to be some detoxification and some breaking of habit that's a little uncomfortable. But you can be guaranteed the science is there, and there are hundreds of thousands, millions of people now doing intermittent fasting. So what I would say is just be uncomfortable with it, just like in my program, for 5 to 10 days. If you commit 10 days to just having water till midday, if you need to have a black coffee because you're addicted to that, or, a green tea or a black tea, whatever. Okay, great. Do that. Just skip the milk and the honey, or the milk and the sugar. Keep that out. If you can do intermittent fasting for 10 days, you will be absolutely convinced. You will no longer be hungry in the morning. You'll have more energy. You'll be able to smash it out, and this is where people are like, oh, but Tyler, I do CrossFit. I got to have my 12-egg freaking omelet in the morning just to exist. It's like, no, you don't get it, man. Like, I had such, I posted yesterday. It's funny because I normally don't do this, but, I said, hey, every once in a while it's okay to eat 3 meals in one sitting. P.S. I'm only saying that because I ate 3 meals in one sitting. Like last night, I literally had like 3 meals. It's crazy because I'm normally not like that. But I was just really hungry, so I ate 3 meals. And the thing you got to understand is, like, my body's takes 2 hours to digest that in the stomach, and then it's going to take another 8 hours or more to just assimilate the nutrients from that. So when I wake up in the morning, let's say it's 6 or 7 o'clock, I've just actually received all the nutrients from my meal last night. So thinking I need to gourd myself on breakfast to have energy, like, you just don't get it. You don't understand human physiology. Like, I spend 3 to 4 hours doing activity pretty much every morning. I'm moving my body, I'm stretching, I'm doing some level of strength training, I'm doing yoga type stretching, and then typically moving into some form of martial arts, typically jujitsu, going to the gym and fighting with, big guys, little guys, guys with technique, no technique, kicking my butt, whatever. So I'm spending 2 to 3 hours of, smashing it pretty hardcore, coming home, sweating, going and getting in the shower, doing all this stuff, and then it's only 10 o'clock and I'm still waiting a couple hours before I eat.
Fascinating. You also mentioned at the beginning that breathing is one form to detox. And obviously everyone knows going to the bathroom as a way to detox or sweating, but how does the breathing actually detox our body?
Yeah, so breathing is the fastest way to alkalize ourselves because, a lot of people think, oh, if I want to alkalize, I got to drink alkaline water or I need to eat alkaline fruits and vegetables. Well, if we stop breathing for 10 minutes, your whole body's going to be so full of acid that you'll probably die, right? So the thing we got to understand, and this is the perfect representation, is if I took one of those ionization machines and I made alkaline water, like they actually have the drops you can put in there and it measures the alkalinity. So if this was super acid water, it would be red. If it was slightly acid, it would be yellow. If it was slightly alkaline, it turns like kind of blue. And then if it's super alkaline, it turns purple. So if I made an alkaline 12 water with this machine, I dropped all the drops in there and it was purple, I could literally take a deep breath and with a straw blow that air into the water. And literally in one breath, it would go from purple to blue. Another breath, it would go from blue to yellow and to red within 2 to 3 breaths, which is showing you how much acid is actually coming out of our body every time we exhale. So I have an artery system that brings oxygen in, and I have a venous system that takes acid out. Red blood feeds the cells, and then the blue blood, veins returning, takes all of the acid carbonic waste out. So, you have a cell, it gets food, it eats, and then it poops. That poop is acid. And the way we eliminate those acids mostly is through our breath. And people never think about this really. The fastest way I can alkalize my body, if I want to alkalize my body very quickly, it looks like this. Now, most people that do that, even with like 4 or 5 breaths, they'll get dizzy. They'll potentially even pass out because of the level of alkalinity that starts to happen in the movement of the acids that start to happen inside of the body. Right? So every time you breathe deeply, you're taking in oxygen, you're alkalizing your body. Every time you exhale, you're getting rid of a lot of acid. So we can either do that consciously through breathing exercises, which is what I teach, or, simply go for a walk, a run, go to the gym, lift some weights. What are we doing when we're lifting weights? It's requiring oxygen. Aerobic activity requires oxygen, and it's one of the greatest ways to detox. First and foremost, respiration. So, I hope I answered your question.
Definitely did. So, acidity seems to be an issue in the body on so many levels, and there is correlation between animal proteins and acidity and animal proteins and cancer. So now I would like to kind of zero in on cancer specifically. What is cancer and how does it manifest in the body?
Okay, so from a scientific perspective, cancer is caused because there are something called carcinogens that develop and build up in the body that actually destroy the DNA of the cell. Okay? Now, if I have cells that are producing acid and I don't clean those acids out through the lymphatic movement, those acids can become carcinogenic. Or I could actually bring something in that's a known carcinogen that is actually destroying the cells. Smoking cigarettes, drinking alcohol, eating foods with artificial sweeteners and colorings, whatever, preservatives, et cetera, et cetera. So if I have a cell, the cell gets bathed in a carcinogen or acid, the cell can no longer deal with the level of onslaught of those acids, so the acids get inside of the cell. It destroys the DNA in the nucleus of the cell. Now the cell replicates because even when our DNA gets damaged, we have little repair mechanisms and enzymes that can fix it all of the time. But when the cell DNA gets damaged and then it replicates, it's that replicated cell that now is born into the world with damaged DNA. That's a cancer cell. And it will replicate based on the same damaged DNA. It believes that that's the way it's supposed to be. It replicates, replicates, replicates. That's the actual scientific definition of cancer. Okay? Now, we have white blood cells called cancer killer cells that will actually destroy the cancer cells. So if we have a boosted immune system, our body will deal even with the cancer cells. Some people believe like, oh, a cancer cell is immortal and you have to have chemotherapy or radiation. That's complete nonsense. And scientifically, our body kills cancer. That's a fact. Our immune system kills it. Okay, so when you eat a lot of plants, that supports our immune system. The immune system can fight off cancer cells. When you eat a lot of animal foods, there is a suppression of the immune system that takes place. But that's not the key factor. The key factor is in the acidic nature of when we eat animal foods, okay? So let's say I eat, let's just pick bananas. Let's say I want to eat 1,000 calories and I eat 1,000 calories of bananas. Well, every food that we eat is going to provide nutrition to the cell to give it energy. The cell is going to produce X amount of acid as a byproduct. When I eat a banana, the mineral content or the pH positive value called positive hydrogen, pH plus, that's there counteracts the acid production from energy. Does that make sense? So if I eat 1,000 calories of bananas, the energy that's producing a certain amount of acid, the banana contains the materials that's going to clean up the acid. So I am alkaline by nature and acidic by function. When I eat the bananas, I produce the acid, but the banana's qualities cleans it up. Whereas when I eat animals, if I eat a dead animal, it's going to produce X amount of energy for my cell, which produces X amount of acid. But now on top of all the energy that it took to break down that dead animal, which is a lot of energy, so it takes a lot more energy, producing a lot more acid, and I don't have the positive hydrogen plus to counteract the acid. In fact, I have a positive hydrogen negative, which produces more acid. So I get acid from eating a dead animal, and I get acid from the energy production. It's a double acid experience. Now, yes, if I drink a lot of water, if I do some intermittent fasting, I'm shitting, I'm pissing, I'm sweating, and I'm breathing deeply, I can still counteract that acid, but it requires a lot more. It requires a lot more consciousness around exercise and cleaning the lymphatic system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there you have it. If I'm eating greens, I'm eating bananas, I'm eating vegetables, fruits, et cetera, and that's the bulk of my diet, all the positive mineral qualities and antioxidants and alkalinity that's created is more than counteracting all the acid production from energy without having to do much. And so you throw in some exercise and some detoxification on top of that, we're going to live a long, healthy life, period. And you start throwing in animal foods, the problem is a very small amount of animal food is a very high calorie. So somebody might be like, well, I don't eat much. I just eat one burger a day, or I just have one meal with meat in it. Well, that's probably still going to be the bulk of your calories. So even if it's only 1,000 calorie meal, that's a reduction of 1,000 calories you would have gotten from plants, which is a massive amount of antioxidants, a massive amount of hydration, and positive hydrogen ions to counteract the acids. So when you look at the longest lived cultures on the planet, again, they're eating so many plants that they appear to have a completely plant-based diet. And when it comes to actually eating animals, they might have a little bit of lamb or a little bit of chicken or a little bit of fish, But that's like once a week or a couple times a week. It's not even every day. Sustainable cultures realize we can't eat pig every day. Otherwise, you're going to have a pig farm, which is you're going to have to grow enough food just to feed the pigs. And all the waste and runoff and everything else is not going to be sustainable for the community. So really, what is sustainable for the planet is also sustainable and healthy for us as humans. And that's really where we just have to gain some insights and come to the realization that, hey, you don't have to be vegan, but you really need to assess how much of this stuff you're eating if you want to have a positive impact on the planet and not leave such a massive blueprint or footprint, I should say. Wanting to have bacon and eggs for breakfast, chicken for lunch, and beef for dinner every day. Like, people don't want to admit it. When I say that, it sounds bad, and they don't want to admit it, but it's the truth. People have bacon and eggs on toast with butter for breakfast every day, or at least, some sausages or some kind of meat, and then chicken for lunch. I have a salad for lunch. Yeah, with a little bit of chicken, or I have a wrap with a little bit of chicken or a little bit of turkey, or everybody's eating meat 3 times a day or animal products 3 times a day. It is not sustainable. If you're contributing to that, you are a major contributing factor to the destruction of this planet, and you're really messing things up for our children, our children's children, and for me. I plan on being immortal personally, so I think on a completely different scale than any other human being. And if you could think about this for a minute, like if we actually had the potential to bring back the wisdom of ancient Egypt and regenerate our bodies like they taught and actually live for 1,000 years like Methuselah and the people of the Bible and everything else, your entire mindset shifts. If I'm going to be here for 1,000 years, what do I need to be about to make sure that it's still a nice place to live in 1,000 years from today? And what that looks like is sustainable systems, hydroponics, organic growing, and really having some consciousness. So anyways, ranting a bit.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Tyler. From ancient wisdom to modern science, we've gotten a lot of information from you and inspiration as well. So thank you for your work.
Thank you for having me, my friends. Good chatting.
We hope you enjoyed this presentation. We're always amazed how much there is to learn, and that's the exciting part. You never know how far this journey will take you. Luke grew up being the fat kid, suffering from health issues, and even tried to take his life. And I've lost my mom to cancer when I was only 19. But today, here we are with you and this amazing community. We're humbled and thankful because together we can thrive and inspire those around us. And if you'd like to support our work, we want to invite you to consider owning the Summit for Life. Click the button below to find out more. Thank you once again, whether you're participating in the comments, sharing the Summit online, or supporting us by owning the Summit package. You are making a difference because the Summit just wouldn't be possible without you. This is Toby and Luke signing off, and we'll see you in the next interview.